It's awesome to be with you guys this morning. Last week I had COVID. All clear now. My wife's still struggling. She has an autoimmune disease, so she's got long COVID, I think. Not I think, but yeah. So she's had it for longer than you should. But she's getting on the mend, so hopefully she keeps that trend, because we thought we were going to have to call an ambulance, but we're hoping it's all behind us. It's looking good today, so I've left the kids at home with her, so I'm praying they're just being beautiful kids and angels at home. Before I get into the message, I just want to commend Josh, because I heard Josh sing, and it was really good. And I guess I used to work at Hume Ridge, so there was a time Josh was shorter than me. I remember this time very fondly. And he's not anymore, so it's just awesome to see him growing up and being this awesome young man, and just, to witness some of the growth is just awesome. So just wanted to share that instead of just having digs at you all the time. But we're doing a series called Judges for Us. And today I'm trying to look at the story of Samson. Obviously, if you look at Samson in your Bible, it's a long story. So I'm not going to go through everything. But I want to look at it. But before I get into it too much, I have a question for you. Oh, my clicker's not working. Jeffrey, I'm going to have to trust you. He's got to hit the arrow. Oh, to watch. It's not going to work on me now. Oh, you go. Is it not working? Oh, we're not working. We're struggling. No, fine. While Jeffrey figures it out, I'll go on ahead, because we'll get there. But my question is, have you ever felt powerless? Has anyone ever felt powerless in the room? I guess for me, I had a moment where I felt powerless. Is this thing? Oh, it still doesn't work. Jeffrey, you can go back to the clock picture. Yeah, I'm good now. Awesome. But I had a moment that I felt powerless. This moment happened around 10 a.m. So what happened is I woke up in the morning, and we found out Gideon and Esther tested positive. This was Wednesday, so they're cuddling next to Dad. I'm still feeling a bit yucky and that kind of stuff, so I'm cuddling them. I'm debating going to have a shower, and I have Esther on one side of me and Gideon on the other. So, you just have them both between you. And for some reason, I was like, I felt something telling me no to go have a shower. So I'm like, all right. So I kept laying there. My son Gideon, who hasn't had a seizure since he was 2, sat up, screamed "ah" really loud, and then started having a seizure. And his arms locked up, his legs locked up, and I had to just hold him on his side. I have Esther behind me trying to figure out what's going on. I quickly call Kim. Kim, come in here. She calls the ambulance. She's saying our son's having a seizure. He's frothing out of the mouth. He even stopped breathing. And I felt powerless, because I can't do anything. I'm not a trained nurse. I don't know what to do. All I could do was hold my son on his side and say it's going to be okay. Well, I see his oldest brother, who comes into the room with the commotion, standing behind Kim, and he's starting to cry about what's going on. I have Kim panicking like any mom would be panicking when your son's responding that way. And I have Esther, got her off of YouTube Kids, which is surprising when she's sick, but she's freaking out. And I can do nothing. I can't make Gideon better. I can't stop the seizure. I don't know what to do. I was just holding him. So we called an ambulance. Gideon was all right, thankfully. We got to look into some stuff, because he used to have infantile epilepsy, so who knows, but he hasn't had one since he was 2. Luckily, we went to hospital. He was fine. They sent us back home, and we just had to keep his fever down. But I guess I thought about this the next day, and I thought, what kind of character would it create if you never felt powerless? So if you never felt powerless in your whole life, what kind of character would that make? And then I remembered, hey, I got to read the story Samson. I've already read it once, and I was like, I got to read the story Samson again. So then I read the story Samson, and I was kind of blown away. If we go to the next slide, you'll see a cool picture of Samson. I don't know if you can see all that, but that's the Bible Project. They do these awesome things. But that's a little thing about Samson. And instead of going into everything, I wanted to give you a little run through of what happens in the story of Samson. So chapter 13 starts off, and oftentimes like in Judges, Israel has done something. They've sinned against God again, and they're under oppression. So they're under oppression by the Philistines again. An angel of the Lord visits Manoah's wife. Tells Manoah's wife, who we never know the name of, that she's going to have this boy Samson. Gives this wife instructions on what to do. Doesn't say the cutting hair thing, but just gives instructions. And then Manoah goes and tells her husband. Manoah's wife goes and tells the husband, I've had this angel of the Lord visit me. Look, it's so cool, blah, 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 blah. Husband does the great thing. Doesn't really believe it. He's like, I'm going to pray. So he prays for the angel of the Lord to come back again and visit him because he missed out. He wants to have the visit. The angel of the Lord visits again, but he still visits just Manoah's wife, who runs off quickly to go get the husband. And then it's kind of like this interesting exchange between the husband and the angel I want to look at later, but the angel doesn't really say much. He's like, I kind of already told your wife, like, shh, listen to her kind of thing. But the story goes on where they offer him food, and the angel of the Lord says, I can't eat food, basically. Give God an offering. So they set up an altar, and the angel of the Lord goes back up in the flame, which seems really cool to me. And it says after all that, the husband finally believes it's an angel of the Lord, which just seems surprising to me with the turn of events. But that's chapter 13, and then you have Samson get born. And then chapter 14 starts, and it's a bit of a time jump. We have a grown-up Samson who goes down to Timnah, and he desires a woman. One of Samson's, thorn in the flesh, you might want to call it, is his lust. He lusts after women. So he goes back home. He demands for his parents to get this woman. Get this Philistine woman for me. I want her. Parents are kind of like, yo, can't you just have, look at all the ladies here. Why you got to go there? Samson's like, no, I want it. And that's just what I imagine. I imagine a big, strong kid, stomping his feet and making it, fine, whatever, Samson will go. On the way, Samson tears a lion in half. And he leaves the carcass, and the carcass has honey in it on the way back, so he shares the honey. And it's just a sign of how strong Samson is, how the Spirit of the Lord has kind of given Samson this strength and this gifting. Samson gets his wife like he wants. We still don't get a name for this woman. We just get Samson's wife. And he shares a riddle at this dinner feast, and as a bet with these Philistines to kind of, get some money. And these people he shares a riddle with can't figure it out. So they go to the wife, and they're like, oi, you tell us or else we're coming for you. So the wife goes to her new husband and says, oh, it really hurts me. You won't tell me the riddle. And Samson's like, I haven't even told my parents. And I imagine, there's other wordings, but Matt's simplified version, the wife goes, but do you really love me? And then Samson tells her. She goes and tells the people this. They get the riddle right, and it says that Samson's anger burns. And there was all this clothing involved, so he goes on this rampage, and he kills 30 men in Ascalon to pay back the bet. And it says his anger is still burning, so he leaves his wife there, who is given to his companion, kind of like his best man. I don't know how that arrangement would have worked, but somehow Samson's gone, wife's still there, she gets given to the companion. And then we get to chapter 15, and Samson kind of misses his wife. So he goes back to get his wife, discovers what has happened. His anger burns again, because he's kind of like, how could you do this to me, father-in-law? Oh, I'm so angry. So he does what any super strong man who feels mighty and never feels powerless. He gets 300 jackals together. I don't know how you catch a jackal. If you want to imagine that, you can. But he ties them in pairs, tail by tail. He sets the tail on fire. I think he has a little thing in it on fire. So when they run through a field like crazy, they're jackals. They don't want to get burned. So they're like, ah! They destroy crops. And it destroys all this crops for the Philistines. Which leads to his wife and the father-in-law and the whole family getting burned alive. So when Samson does this, the Philistines are like, oi, that's not right. So they take out his wife and the whole family. Samson hears about this and he fumes again, and it says that he slaughters and he rises up against these Philistines and the perpetrators, and he wipes them all out. And then he goes off on a cliff, it says, the cliff off the rock of Edom. He finds a little, side cliff part to hang out. So Samson's escaped. The Philistines are angry because you still have, all these Philistines that were killed by him. So Judah is punished. And Judah's kind of getting punished, and they seek Samson to kind of turn him over. Just because, they're tired of getting punished. So they make this deal, and Samson's like, all right, as long as, you don't kill me and take me over, I'll go, and rah, rah, rah. So they do that. Samson goes. It says that when he's bound, the Spirit of the Lord, which so often in these moments, you'll see it in these moments, when Samson has these incredible feats. It's really interesting because it always wants to point out that the Spirit of the Lord, this gifting of the Lord, comes upon him. Comes upon him, he gets a donkey's jawbone, and he kills 1,000 Philistines. Which to me sounds crazy, because we're not talking about wimps. We're talking about warriors themselves, and they're taken out with a donkey's jawbone. He's thirsty after this, and God provides him water and Leah. And the chapter ends saying that Samson judges for 20 years. And then chapter 16 starts, and you have Samson find a prostitute. Because that's his thorn in the flesh was women. So he lusts after this woman. This woman, and his lust almost leads to him getting killed by the Philistines. But again, the Spirit of the Lord comes to protect Samson. The gifting Samson has that God enabled in him comes again, and he's able to destroy them and get away free. He falls in love with a lady named Delilah, the only woman throughout the whole story that's given a name, which I wish I could go into today, but we'll go into that another time. But she's the only woman throughout the story that gets a name. Delilah accepts 1,100 silver pieces to find out Samson's weakness for the Philistines. We kind of don't know what Delilah really thinks about Samson. We don't know if the feelings are kind of shared. It doesn't really go into that too much. We just get a clear picture that Samson's just head over heels, which I can imagine because, I'm now married to Kim. But I remember when we first dated, she didn't remember me. But, man, I remembered her. I was head over heels. We got the first time we met wrong because she doesn't remember. She thinks it's a bowling alley when she came to pick up her sister. And I'm like, oi, you can bowl my turn. And tried to, use my magic. And she's like, no, I'm good. And stood back. She thinks that's the first time. It was really a month before then, but that's all right. It's all right. So I can understand Samson maybe being head over heels, but he's head over heels over this girl. And this girl tries to figure out his weakness 3 times. She asks him the weakness. Samson gives her a lie. She does the lie. The Philistines show up, and Samson frees himself. This happens 3 times, which to me is funny because anyone else, you would have put the dots together I think this person's out to get me, but we don't get that in the story. You have Samson after these 3 times telling her the truth. Delilah again uses her, but do you really love me kind of thing? And Samson gives in. He tells her, look, it's my hair. You cut my hair, and my strength goes. So she does it, which leads to him getting shaved and captured. And when he's captured as well, he's blinded. So the Philistines are having fun because Samson's caused them a lot of pain. So it says that they blind him, take out his eyes, and he's captured and led away. The Philistines are throwing this big party, celebrating that they've captured Samson. And they get Samson to come out and amuse them, it says. I don't know how Samson would amuse them. Maybe he was a good dancer. Who knows? Maybe they're throwing tomatoes at him. I don't know what they did. But somewhere in this amusement, Samson finds the 2 house pillars. He gets those helping guide him, help him find them so he can put his hands on them. And it says that his hair is starting to go back, and he prays for God to give him strength. And it says that he pushes these pillars, and the whole house, the whole area the celebration's happening in, crumbles. And it causes more destruction than Samson did in his whole life. So the story tells us. And then Samson's body is collected and buried by his family. I think if we go to the next slide, I think it's clear to me, looking at the story of Samson, Samson never felt powerless until being captured. If you look at his story, I don't think he would have had many powerless moments. I mean, look at some of the strength he had. He took people out with a donkey's jawbone. He can catch like 300 jackals. How do you catch 300 jackals? Like, they're dangerous. I couldn't even catch one. Like, he does all this stuff, and you can see throughout the story, up until he's captured and his head shaved, he doesn't really have a powerless moment. We don't have a lot of dialogue between Samson and God till the very end, because Samson kind of gets this powerless moment upon him. If we go to the next slide, I think what this shows me is that power doesn't mean good character, because Samson was a bad leader. That doesn't mean he didn't have the Spirit of the Lord on him to do some incredible things. But I think he was a bad leader because he didn't use that gifting the way God probably really wanted him to. Because it's what we see in the book of Judges. As the Judges start off, it kind of gets from, oh, that's not that bad. You got Deborah at the beginning. And as you go along, it gets worse and worse and worse. And you'll see next week how it erupts as civil war. And I think this story really just magnifies to me that having all the power in the world doesn't mean you're going to have good character. And I think we see the warning signs of this at the beginning of the story of Samson. In Judges 13, verses 8 to 14, which I want to read to you now, I think we see these warning signs. And this is what we read. Then Manoah pleaded with the Lord and said, Lord, please let the man of God whom you have sent come to us again, so that he may teach us what we are to do for the boy who is to be born. And God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman as she was sitting in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her. Next slide. Yeah. So the woman hurried and ran and told her husband, behold, the man who came the other day has appeared to me. So Manoah got up, followed his wife, and when he came to the man, he said to him, are you the man who spoke to the woman? I kind of pause there. I kind of feel like that question's a bit silly to me. It's like, didn't your wife just tell you that? Like, do you not trust her? Like, she's gotten confused by the guy but whatever. And this is what the angel says. He goes, and he said, I am. Then Manoah said, now, when your words are fulfilled, what shall be the boy's way of life and his vocation? And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, the woman shall pay attention to all that I said. She shall not eat anything that comes from the vine, nor drink wine or strong drink, nor eat any unclean thing. She shall keep all that I commanded. What I love about that is the angel doesn't give an answer to the vocation and job. He doesn't say, Samson's going to do X, Y, Z with this gifting that God's giving him. It's pretty clear that this is a miraculous event, that God's raising up the potential for a leader to change the world. He's bestowing a gifting on this person that the world needs. And here we can kind of see through his dad and what his dad's saying. You see something really clearly if we go to the next slide. I think Manoah's response throughout the story when he's at the beginning shows a lack of trust. Doesn't really trust God, doesn't trust his wife. I mean, you just read it. Like, his wife came the next day to say, look, the guy who visited me is back again. He gets there, and the first question is, did you visit my wife yesterday? Like, man, if that was me, and let's say Kim did that, and I'm running, and are you the angel that visited my wife? I'm pretty sure the angel wouldn't have to slap me in the face because Kim would have already done it. So, but I think it shows that he doesn't have this trust, because I think God's giftings don't come with a control panel. And what I mean by that is you see throughout the story again and again, it says the Spirit of the Lord was on Samson. The Spirit of the Lord was on Samson. And he gets this incredible strength. He has this incredible gifting. But God doesn't control how he uses it completely. he got to make his own choices. He got to decide how he used that gifting, which oftentimes happen after Samson does something silly. You know, he's the one who told a riddle in a bet to some people who then were trying to kill his wife. So then he gets mad and kills 30 men to get satisfy the bet, and then leaves his wife. And then he comes back to realize his wife's been given away. And he's the one who chooses to let those jackals destroy the field. Again and again, you see that God's given him this great gifting, but it doesn't come with a control panel. God's not going to tell us how to use our giftings. He's not going to, for example, I'm pretty good with words sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. And if I can be honest, this is really bad. I figured it out when I was a kid. I can read emotions pretty well, which means it's really good as a kid to get your own way because you know how to, shift through, and I could use that for good or evil. I still can now. God's not going to come if I'm using it for bad and stop me where I'm like a robot, because that's not what God does. He gives us these giftings and allows us to use it, allows us to step into what he's called us to or to step away from it. I think we see throughout the story of Samson something really interesting. And that's that they don't really do a lot of inner work. Something I'll bang on a lot about if you hear me talk, probably. But they don't really do the inner work with God. We don't read many stories of them sitting and praying with God. Let's look at when Samson goes back to discover his wife's been given away. Yeah, that would have hurt. That would have been awful. I would have probably wanted to beat some people up too. I can completely understand all this. But we don't ever read of him taking a minute, right? Going, let me just go sit with God and pray. Let me sit with God to figure out what to do with this rising anger, because right now I just want to kill everyone, and I got the power to do it. But before I do that, I'm going to take a step back. We don't see that happen often. We don't see this inner work taking place. And I think that's something that's really important for us, is we have to do the inner work. And if we go to the next slide. Yeah, to figure out how to use the giftings God has placed within us, we need to remember power doesn't equal good character. It's all right to be powerless. Doing the inner work is what I think develops character. I think you see that throughout the Bible when you look at stories of people, when you look at the example Jesus gave. How often was he off in solitude? How often did he spend one-on-one time with God? We read again and again of him sneaking away from the disciples. You read stories of the disciples getting frustrated by this. But he seems like he's always doing this inner work. He knows what God's wanting him to do and not do. He's knowing the times to stay in a village and to keep moving. And I think we have to do this inner work before it gets too late. If we go to the next slide. Oh, was that me or you? I thought that was me. I thought I clicked your word. God, excited. God doesn't want us to wait till it's too late. But they will not force us how we use the giftings given to us. We all have unique giftings. This is something I've seen again and again, especially with the work I've done in churches and now doing a little bit of chaplaincy again at Highfield State Secondary College. There's so many kids who, they're brilliant. But sometimes they don't use their powers for good, like the GOs and I like to joke about. Like, if only they could use their powers for good and not evil. I mean, there's this one kid, right? He is year 7, smart. I play handball with him. I've joked with him. Man, he's so smart. But do you know what he spends most of his time and his energy developing? How to say a man's private parts in class. And he's told me all these different ways to do it sneakily. And I'm like, man, if you put that into your work, you'd get straight A's. But God doesn't control how we use the giftings that he's given to us. We all have something to bring to the world. And I think God doesn't want us to wait till it's too late. I think you kind of see that in the Samson story. You see Samson be in this capacity to be this incredible leader. You see moments where the Spirit of God comes on him, and man, Samson gets it right. But then you see so many moments where he keeps getting it wrong. And you see at the very end him start doing the inner work. That's the first time we ever read of Samson praying. I don't think God wants us to wait till then with our giftings. But it's going to take two things for us to do if we want to, use the giftings God's given us for his purpose. And the first thing is to embrace powerlessness. What I mean by that is, I think in the Samson story, having incredible strength would have been cool, but it would have made you feel like nothing can hurt you. And I don't know if that's a good thing. I think sometimes we need to embrace the powerlessness of life. Because we can't control everything. There are some situations we're completely powerless to control. I mean, becoming a parent has been the biggest sign of that for me. I have three beautiful kids. Each have amazing giftings. I'm halfway scared and excited to see what kind of adults they'll be. Forgive me if they use their powers for evil. But that's one thing that's become clear in parenting is I don't have as much control as I thought, especially as they're growing up. My son's in year 7 now. There's stuff he keeps from me. He doesn't have to tell me everything. As he gets older, it's just going to get more like that. When he's 18, he doesn't have to have me in his life. Like, I'm powerless with some of the decisions he's going to make as he gets older. I'm not with him all the time. There's things I can't control, and I got to embrace that. There's things I can't control in society. We watch the news, and we can see all this bad stuff happening, but there's so much of it we can't control. There's stuff we might be able to speak into, in our area where God's placed us, but there's some stuff we can't do anything. We're powerless. And I think we got to embrace that. And then after we embrace that, we got to do the next thing, which is to invite God into our whole hearts in these moments. And these moments of powerlessness, wherever they come up, if it's something with society, if it's something with parenting, if it's, relationship, I don't know, even that's another one I'm powerless on. Like, I love Kim, but no one told me married life was going to be such hard work, Living with another person, like, I love her, but man, there's so much I'm powerless on. I mean, even in relationships, if we're dating, you discover that pretty early, right? So we got to invite God in these moments, I think. Instead of running from them or trying to figure out a way to control, which is something I often do, reading emotions, knowing how things work, thinking logical. I know how to work my magic, so I still have a sense of control. I don't like feeling powerless. But I'm trying to embrace it more because I don't think that's healthy for me to keep walking like that. I think it's better for me to embrace it, invite God in these moments. And Gideon's seizure was a great sign of that. I could do squat. I had nothing to help that kid. He stopped breathing. He's foaming at the mouth. I got a son crying. I got a daughter crying behind me. I got a wife freaking out. And we're not knowing what's going on. I couldn't do much besides hold him on his side, because I've read somewhere that you got to keep airways clear and, you don't want him biting tongue. So that's about all I can do. And in that moment, I just invited God into my whole heart. I invited God to hold me and help me figure it out. I invited God to be there with our whole family, to give me the right words to say, the right words not to say. I even invited God to let him know how pissed off I would be if he wasn't going to do something to stop it. So it wasn't all roses of, God, I know you got this, and Jesus, I just need to trust you more. There was some of that, but there was some of like, God, you need to do something. Don't let my son in like this. Because I've heard stories of people who have seizures and then that's it. I didn't want that for him. I invited God into that whole space. And I think if we want to be good leaders in our community, if we want to use the giftings God's placed within us, we have to do what we see Samson struggle to do, which is if we go to the next slide. Is there another one? Oh, that's it. Go me. We have to do what Samson struggles to do, and I think that's embrace powerlessness. You don't see that a lot in Samson's story. I think the gifting God placed within him is often his Achilles' heel as well. And I think we can see that throughout the story. We've got to embrace powerlessness and invite God into our whole hearts in those moments. And I think if we do that, we can use the giftings God's placed within each one of us to bring some of God's love and light to the world.